Fine. This brings us to the next important question, which is here. Now you see, this question was a bit offbeat question. Directly, we did not have such kind of thing in the technical issue. Am I clearly visible, audible? My screen is visible to everybody? Fine. Okay. So this question was a bit offbeat question. If you see, it was about regarding the nature of new Cold War, or what has been the challenge posed by China as compared to the challenge posed by United States or the Soviet Union, erstwhile Soviet Union. The question is, the USA is facing an existential threat in the form of China that is much more challenging than the erstwhile Soviet Union. Explain. Fine. But you see, whatever we have been studying in the geopolitics has been regarding the confrontation between US and China. Fine. For example, when we read about Indo-Pacific region, we were talking about US-China confrontation, plus what is the role of India. Fine. If you look at West Asia, the West Asian Quad has been formed. One of the stated objectives by the experts, not directly stated by the member countries in the West Asian Quad, is to counter the Chinese influence there, right? Plus, if you look at Africa, it is to counter Chinese influence. Look at the Central Asia. US wants to want to reduce the Chinese influence. That is how this question was continuously being discussed, and that's why this question was asked, because we have been witnessing all these things in India's neighborhood and in the larger geopolitical arena. So it was a part of effects of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India, because if the Cold War is there, if the challenge is more severe, you look at India's position during the Cold War. In the last Cold War, what was India's position? India had really good relations with the USSR or the erstwhile USSR, right? But what is happening right now? Although India has improved relations with US, but still, US is not an all-weather friend of India, what USSR used to be. Fine. If you look at China, China is one of the biggest adversaries of India right now because of the border issues that we are having and the trade deficit that India has, isn't it? Plus, because of the increasing influence of China in India's neighborhood. So, look at the previous year questions. Questions have been asked related to quadrilateral security dialogue, Indo-US defense deals, Iran nuclear deal, which was between US and the Iran, P5 countries and the Iran, but it had impact on India. That is why this kind of question where US-China confrontation is there, of course, it will have impact on India's interest also, right? Plus, if you look at India's position in this particular question, it is also different from what India's position used to be in the last Cold War, right? So that is how things have changed. So current context was, of course, the US-China confrontation that is visible in the Indo-Pacific region in the form of AUKUS, trade war that started between US and China, and the Quad which was formed, plus the AUKUS that was formed in the Indo-Pacific region. That is why this question was asked. So how would you approach this question? So what would the answer structure look like? Plus, we only had to write this answer in 150 words. So it was a 10-marker question. So we have to very precisely hit on the very important area, what would fetch you good marks and address the demand of the question. So in the first part, you would have to contrast the US's position in the last Cold War with its present position. Okay, after the Second World War, US was all dominant economically, technologically, militarily. Okay, but now the US has a kind of fatigue here. The economic growth is not that great. Okay, although US is one of the economic powers, but it is also dependent on China for some of its economic growth. Okay, investments in US are from this the sovereign fund from the West Asian countries like Saudi Arabia, okay, which was not the case earlier. Earlier, US was the epicenter of the economic growth, okay, in this during the Cold War. That is why US was one of the biggest powers then. So what we'll do in the body part, we'll highlight the areas where China has an edge in competing with the US as compared to erstwhile Soviet Union, because we have to compare the position of China and the Soviet Union on the one hand, plus US and China on the other hand. Okay, so we have three things to handle here. So we will highlight the areas where China has an edge in competing with the US as compared to what the competition that was posed by the erstwhile USSR. These are the areas like economic, military, as well as technology sphere. These are the three areas. These are the three what makes you a superpower, isn't it? Okay, so that is how it is. Plus, although this question has not been directly asked about India's position, but we will write something about India's position because the syllabus has mentioned these things. Okay, so in the conclusion part, we'll add that. Okay, so that is how we do it. So the introduction could be the challenge posed by China to the US hegemony is grave because of the reduced power of the United States of America and economic and military might of China as compared to erstwhile USSR. Simple. It's a very simple introduction. The position now is that the US is not that great a power now. But China, if you compare it with Russia, is a greater power now. So that is how you introduce this thing straight away in the introduction part. That is, the challenge is grave because US's power has reduced. At times, articles were also seen that has the US lost its superpower status. Okay, that these articles were there in the news, in the Hindu paper. We have discussed them in DNS sometimes, right? Plus, we are witnessing economic and military might of China is way higher if you compare it with what USSR used to be during the last Cold War, right? So that is why it is. So in the second part, where you have to highlight the challenge and contrast it with the challenge posed by the USSR, you will focus on these points. What could be the points? First is, the US's dominance has reduced in terms of economic, technological, and military power. Second, unlike the Soviet Union, China's immediate objective is regional dominance and not global competition, where it is at par with the US military, example, the Belt Road Initiative, South China Sea, etc. If you look at the South China Sea, if you look at the Indo-Pacific, China is a considerable power there. Okay, plus Chinese focus has been on regional dominance. China does not want to enter into South America. Okay, or China does not want its dominance in Canada. Or at least it has not outrightly said that, even though it wants such kind of dominance. But the focus area of China is on the regional dominance. That is in the Central Asian region, in the West Asian region, in the South Asian neighborhood, in the Indo-Pacific region. So this is the area of focus. So here we are contrasting it with the position of Soviet Union. So Soviet Union had interests across the globe. Wherever it could spread communism was the area of Soviet Union. So that is how we are comparing it with the challenge posed by the Soviet Union. Then if you look at this, unlike the Soviet Union, China is an economic powerhouse and is integrated with the global economy, which gives it an edge. You look at Soviet Union, okay, what happened when the USSR disintegrated? Two important reforms were promised by the Soviet Union, that is the Glasnost and the Perestroika. Okay, that is, we will provide you economic reforms as well as political reforms. Why economic reform? Because the communist-led model did not provide economic growth. It did not uplift people out of poverty. Okay, but if you compare it with China, China has a state-led capitalistic model, plus it is running efficiently, plus it is creating growth for China, which is seen as one of the important economic powers in the world these days, right? That is why we compare the Chinese economic presence as compared to the USSR's economic presence. Then, if you look at US economy, when USSR was there, US and Russia did not have anything in common in terms of economy. There was very less dependency. But if you look at the position of US as compared to China, their economies are integrated. Plus, you can say the Chinese growth story has been because of the United States of America, right? Because in 1970s, when the United States of America recognized China officially, only in the last 3 decades, when the US recognized China officially, and also US started improving its relations with China, that China became a superpower. China became an economic power because China provided exports, manufacturing exports to the United States of America. Fine. But you cannot write it, right? China is more cunning than USSR. You cannot write it in the examination, right? We are also dealing with diplomacy here. So we have to use things very diplomatically. We should sound like an educated person, isn't it? So the US economy is closely integrated with the Chinese economy, which was not the case with the USSR. At every point, we have to address the demand of the question, because we have been asked the question to compare the position of China as compared to the position of Soviet Union in front of the United States of America. Then you look at the technology. Unlike USSR, China is keeping pace with the US because of its position as the global manufacturing and also having an ambitious private sector, which was not the case with the Soviet Union. Although USSR started very emphatically in the Cold War period in terms of technology with the launch of Sputnik and all these things, right? But it could not keep pace with the United States of America in the long term. That is why it did not remain a superpower for long. But in the case of China, if you look at it, China is a global manufacturing hub. Chinese private sector is a huge private sector. Okay, although it is controlled by the state or the Communist Party, but still, it's a very big power. That is how you see. Then the US and the USSR Cold War was about ideological differences mainly. Okay, first pillar was ideological difference, which was followed in different fields like economy, politics, technology, everywhere. But here, although it is said that the Cold War is between different ideologies, but still the Chinese economy is a state-led capitalistic model. If you compare it with the US has a democratic capitalistic model. Fine. Is it understandable? So what you could have written. So USSR Cold War was mainly about ideological differences. It was all about US wanted to export democracy, USSR wanted to export communism. And that is how things ended across the globe during the Cold War period. Fine. That is why these countries wanted alliances. These countries wanted countries to take a stand. And plus, India was following a non-aligned stand at that point. Right? So we have highlighted 4 to 5 points, which are more than enough for a 10-marker questions, right? And this has been written in the word limit. You keep in mind, it has not crossed the word limit. I'll share the PDF after the class of all the model answers that we have written for the questions. Okay. Then in the conclusion part, India faces a grave challenge in the new Cold War with a dominant China along the northern borders, because in the case of Russia or US, the US and Russia were far away during the last Cold War. Although India had good relations with Russia, that was not a problem, but US was not closely located to India. Here, if you look at the second adversary of India in this Cold War, China is located on the northern borders. So that could be a very grave problem for India in the coming future. That is why we will highlight that India and US need to collaborate more effectively to counter the Chinese ambitions, especially in the Indo-Pacific region, because focus of China is also on regional dominance here. Got it? Now, what is one important takeaway after both these questions that we have discussed here? Whoever is preparing seriously for the examination, you should pick up questions and try to prepare or come up with model answers for these questions. When you will start preparing the model answers, your brain will have cramps. That I'm sure. Start writing model answers and get them evaluated. Have I included all the points or not? Okay. So that should be your priority. That will make you understand what exactly is required when it comes to answer writing. That should be the first step. And once you have done this practice for almost 1 to 2 months, only then you'll be able to write the answers impromptu. Okay. Impromptu, without preparing an answer structure properly, right? So this is like a homework that you need to do. Okay. No, it is not about current affairs. It is not about more points. You already know everything. You just need to pick up the question, brainstorm on it. What all points can I write here? You research about it on the Google and then come up with proper answer structure for these. And if you have prepared these things, some of the things will be common when you go to the examination, which could be used in every answer there, right? So do this practice more often if you have not started doing it. Okay, at least pick up 2 questions or 1 previous question from very simple, from topics, you can say from very straightforward topics of polity itself. For example, there have been questions related to judicial review in the polity section. Okay, you pick up that question and try to write an answer which satisfies all the demands of the question. That should be your priority. If you keep on doing this practice, I'm sure you'll be scoring good marks in the examination. And that is how you do it. That is the only way you do it. It is not you study more and one day you go and write the answers. It will never happen. Okay. So keep focus on sharpening your answer writing skills by preparing model answer, researching on the topic properly. Only then you'll be able to write good answers. Okay. And looking at the coverage, we have been covering about these things in the Compass magazine in terms of focus areas where the Cold War is undergoing. Although this particular aspect was not there in the Compass, where we had to compare China with the US, but a very commonsensical approach could have helped you in writing the answer to this question. Okay, but had you written this in this format where you talked about the comparison, it could have fetched you more marks in the examination. Okay.